What if I told you the next global financial quake isn't coming from Beijing or Moscow, but right for Washington, D.C.? You're watching Global Pulse, where geopolitics meets your wallet. And today, we're diving headfirst into a firestorm that's already shaking markets and rattling world leaders. This week, former President Donald Trump, now back in power, unveiled a budget that's more like a declaration of war, both abroad and at home. On the surface, it's a promise to slash spending and flex American power. Under the hood, a $5.5 trillion time bomb. Let's unpack the four ticking engines in this economic standoff. A radical budget gamble, Washington's growing debt spiral, China's strategic retaliation, and a currency war that could reshape the global financial order. Buckle up. Trump's budget shockwave, the big swing asterisk. Forget austerity. Trump's 2026 budget isn't just bold, it's explosive. Slashing nearly $5 trillion from domestic spending over 10 years while boosting military funding and border control, it signals one thing: America first, and second, and third. But here's the twist. The math doesn't add up. While Trump claims this budget will revive the American dream, independent analysts, including the Congressional Budget Office, paint a darker picture. The cuts hit food stamps, Medicaid, and student aid. Meanwhile, defense spending? Up 18%. Veterans Affairs? Another surge. Politico broke it down. The budget banks on 3.4% annual growth, a fantasy number economists say the U.S. hasn't sustainably hit in decades. And it assumes inflation magically cools while interest rates somehow stay high but friendly. Spoiler, they won't. Even Wall Street isn't buying it. Goldman Sachs analysts privately warned investors that Trump's economic roadmap could trigger bond market instability within months. One hedge fund manager put it bluntly: it's like revving a supercar with no brakes. The debt spiral, running hot on borrowed power. Now let's get real about the engine behind this budget. Debt. The U.S. is already staring down a fiscal cliff, and this budget might just grease the tires on the way down. Under Trump's plan, the national debt would cross $45 trillion by 2034. That's not a typo. $45 trillion. For context, that's more than double the entire U.S. economy today. And the warning signs are everywhere. The 10-year Treasury yield is brushing 5%. Mortgage rates have crossed 8%, and credit card delinquencies are climbing. Fitch has already downgraded U.S. credit outlook again. In response, foreign investors are quietly bailing. In just 60 days, Japan, China, and Saudi Arabia dumped over $250 billion in U.S. Treasuries combined. And it's not just numbers, it's trust. The very thing that props up America's financial dominance is starting to crack. Barclays issued a stark warning. The moment trust slips, the U.S. loses its superpower status. Not in a bang, but in 1,000 silent exits. And what's China doing while the U.S. bleeds confidence? China's calculated counterpunch, rewiring the financial grid. Beijing's not watching. It's working, and it's working fast. First, the digital yuan is no longer just an experiment. It's a weapon. China's new government-backed digital bonds are yielding nearly 6%, crushing U.S. Treasuries. And sovereign wealth funds from the Gulf to Southeast Asia are piling in. But the real game changer? Chinese dollar bonds, denominated in dollars but governed by Chinese courts. They're immune to U.S. sanctions and have already raked in over $120 billion. For global investors, it's dollar exposure without Washington's leash. Simultaneously, China's signing massive bilateral loan agreements, $120 billion worth, with Brazil, Indonesia, and Saudi Arabia. These are no longer trade pacts. They're pipelines for a parallel financial universe, one that runs on yuan, not dollars. And the message is clear. If the U.S. wants to weaponize finance, China will rewrite the rulebook. But this fight isn't just about numbers or bonds. It's about power over what the world runs on: raw materials, trust, and code. And China is moving to control them all. And while Washington flexes its budgetary muscles and foreign debt holders quietly walk out the back door, Beijing is playing a longer, quieter game. One transaction, one contract, one bypass at a time. But that's only part of the story. Because the real pressure point? It's not in spreadsheets or sovereign bonds. It's buried deep inside our supply chains. And China knows exactly where to squeeze. Beijing's next move wasn't a counteroffer. It was chokehold. In March 2025, China slammed down strict export controls on rare earth elements like gallium, germanium, and antimony. These aren't exotic minerals. They're the backbone of semiconductors, electric vehicles, and defense systems. And just like that, U.S. chipmakers and weapons contractors found themselves gasping for raw materials. Gallium prices spiked by more than 200% in days. Manufacturing timelines slipped. And while the White House scrambled to roll out Project Stride, a long-term plan to revive American rare earth production, the painful truth was laid bare. Nearly 90% of the global supply still flows through Chinese hands. Europe panicked. Japan started stockpiling. Even Canada opened emergency talks with mining firms. China wasn't just tightening screws, it was rewriting the user manual on global supply chains. And then came the quiet threat: graphite, a critical component in lithium-ion batteries, used in everything from smartphones to fighter jets. China didn't ban it, it just hinted. And the market responded like it heard a fire alarm in a gas station. The message was unmistakable. You can print money, but you can't print minerals. And Beijing? It controls the faucet. But if you think this war is only being fought over rocks and wires, think again. It's also being waged in cyberspace, through money itself. While the U.S. lashes out with financial restrictions and blacklists, China is reshaping the architecture of global payments. Its alternative to SWIFT, still in development, is already gaining traction in countries bruised by Western sanctions or fed up with dollar compliance rules. In early 2025, the yuan overtook the U.S. dollar as the dominant currency in China's own cross-border trade. That's not just a financial shift, it's a geopolitical earthquake. Saudi oil priced in yuan, Brazilian soybeans, Indonesian nickel. The pattern is deliberate, the effect cumulative. One by one, key sectors of global commerce are detaching from dollar dependency. European giants like HSBC and Deutsche Bank underwrote over $40 billion in yuan bonds in a single quarter. Not because they're anti-American, but because they're pro-survival. And then there's the digital yuan, now seamlessly integrated with WeChat and Alipay. It offers instant, low-fee international payments with zero exposure to U.S. banking regulations. For smaller economies or sanctioned regimes, it's not just convenient, it's liberating. This isn't a frontal assault on the dollar. It's a quiet erosion, a slow leak in the hull of a dominant system. As economist Mohammed El-Arian said, reserve currencies don't collapse. They get replaced quietly, deal by deal. So let's step back. What started as a single, high-impact decision by Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent to cut off $78 billion in loans to China has morphed into a full-spectrum economic confrontation. Trump's budget weaponizes spending and debt. China counters with rare earth dominance and a financial infrastructure of its own design. This isn't about tariffs anymore, or even inflation. It's about trust. Who controls it, who breaks it, and who replaces it. The U.S. is betting on brute force, capital markets, legal jurisdiction, and military spending. China's betting on patience, engineering, and soft power built into hard systems. From metals to money, Beijing is building a network where the dollar is welcome, but no longer required. And if this continues, the world won't wake up one day and find the dollar dethroned. It'll just look around and realize it already happened. Now I want to hear from you. Was this financial offensive a masterstroke by Washington or a strategic blunder? Can China's yuan really challenge the dollar in the long run? And how should global industries, especially in tech and energy, adapt to this changing map? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Global Pulse, where we track every move, every maneuver, and every shockwave across the world economy. Thanks for watching. Stay informed, stay ahead, and stay sharp.